Hey guys, I want to go ahead and talk about derivatives of inverse functions. So let me start off by talking about the two functions. Let's say we have f of x, that's our original function, and then we have g of x. And usually they'll give you this notation: g of x is the inverse function, so the inverse of f of x. So it's written f to the power of -1. Okay, so that's what they give us. Now, if you remember, the definition of an inverse function is given by its composite. So f of g of x, okay, when it goes inside of itself, okay, inside of each other, you should end up with x. So what I'm going to do in order to take the derivative of this inverse relationship, I'm going to go ahead and use the chain rule on the left side and take the derivative on the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and do f prime of g of x, okay, times the derivative of the inside is g prime of x, equals the derivative of x is 1. Now, in order to find the derivative of this inverse, I'm going to go ahead and just divide everything by f prime of g of x. So when I divide it, I should have 1 divided by f prime of g of x. And this is the relationship that I have that it gives me. And basically what I always think about is the derivative 1 over the derivative of the original function. Okay, so I know f of x, usually they give you f of x and you got to take the derivative of that guy and then plug in some value. Alright, so let's go ahead and see if we can do some examples. Let's go ahead and do this guy here. F of x equals 3x squared plus 2x, and they tell us f of 1 equals 5, g of x is the inverse, find g prime of 5. Okay, so the way I do it, we know it's 1 over the derivative of the original function, f of x. So if you want, you can start off by saying, okay, 1 over, what's the derivative of this guy? Well, it's going to be 6x plus 2. Alright, good. And the mistake students do is they plug in 5 and they think that's their answer. No. Okay, remember, this is the inverse. G is the inverse. And that's where this relationship here becomes important. So when we say g prime of 5, well, what does that mean? This guy is not the x value. Okay, it is the x value of the inverse, but this guy is the y value of f of x. So 5 is the y value, okay, of f of x. And that's this relationship here. So instead of plugging in 5, we're going to plug in 1. Okay, we're going to plug in 1. So right here, I'm going to plug in 1 over 6 times 1 plus 2, and that's going to give me 1 over 8. Okay, so you got to understand this relationship here. Alright, this is the f function, gives you the 5, but if it, because of the inverse relationship, then we go backwards. Okay, and instead of using 5 to plug in, we use the 1. Okay, let's go ahead and do another one here. They give us this function g of x, the inverse. Now we gotta find the derivative of the inverse at x equals 2. So I know it's 1, and let's see, I can use that 1 over the derivative of this guy. Well, let's see, the derivative is 5x to the 4th plus 3x. Now I gotta plug in something. They don't really give me a point, do they? They just give me this relationship. Now this guy, the 2, is actually the y value of this guy. Does that make sense? Because it's the inverse. We're talking about the inverse right here. So this guy, the 2, is the y value of the original function. So you have this relationship. Basically, you have 2 is equal to x to the 5th plus 3x minus 2. Now basically we got to find a value of x that'll work. You know what, let me go back, I made a mistake. This is 5x to the 4th plus 3. Sorry about that. Now we got to find this relationship here. I can clean it up real quick. Let's see, 4 is equal to x to the 5th plus 3x. And I really don't like this problem. When I saw it, it was a little bit confusing, but honestly, you could try to do different types of algebraic things, but you can just go plug and chug. What value of x would give me 4? 1. 1 to the 5th is 1, plus 3 times 1 is 3. So that would give me the value of 4. Now this is just a weird question. I haven't seen this type of question on the AP exam. Usually they give you a relationship between a point. Okay, as we'll see in the next one. But in this one, I just kind of had to do mental math and think, okay, well, what is this telling me? What value of x will give me 4? X equals 1. So this is the value I'm going to go ahead and put in here. So we're going to have 1 over 5 times 1 to the 4th plus 3. And so G inverse prime of 2 is equal to 1/8. Okay. And that was just a weird one. Okay, so it's 1 over the derivative of the original. Okay, that's my original function, the derivative. So I need to plug in something into this x. Well, what do I use? Well, I'm not going to plug in 2. Okay, but this is the y value. Okay, the y value of the original, not the x value. Okay, because it's the inverse. All right, so this is the y value of the original because we're talking about the inverse, so it switches. All right. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Now this is more familiar, something you will probably see on the AP exam. Alright, so we got to find the g prime of the derivative of the inverse at 3. Okay. So we know that, sorry about that, got my little dog running around. We know that, okay, it's 1 over, okay, this is the inverse, right? This is the inverse. So this is the y value of the original function. Does that make sense? The y value of the original function, the g, right? So this is the y value of the original function. So I guess you can think about it as g of something equals 3. Okay, well look at here. Look at, they gave me that relationship, 7. 7. Okay. Now remember, we have something down here. Remember, we got to take it 1 over the derivative of the original function. Now the derivative, I just have a bunch of g's here, so I have to do g prime of something, right? G. It looks like the original function is just a g. Okay. Well, what am I going to plug in? Well, let's see here. This guy is the y value of the original function. So this is the relationship that I get. So I'm trying to find this x value. And look at here. This is what they give me. So what am I going to plug in? 7. And then what's g prime of 7? Oh, look, they give it to me again. So 1 over 3/4, which becomes 4/3. Okay. So notice how I did that. So it's 1 over the derivative of the original. What's the original? Well, it doesn't give me any function, but I just see a bunch of g. So it's g prime of x. Okay, and then since this is the derivative, this is the y value of the original function, that means I have this relationship, and then I can just kind of use my points. The next one here, and I probably didn't copy this. Let's see, this is a weird one too. When I saw it, it says h of x, and I have to find h prime of 3. And you'll see this comment on the AP exam using tables. Okay, so I know it's going to be 1 over the derivative of the original function. Okay. And you see you have x, f prime, g prime. Okay. So, well, what's my original function? Okay. It's going to be that f function. Okay. So, f prime of something is going to go in here. Alright. Well, why not the g? Well, because look at this relationship here. H is the inverse of f. That means f is the original function. Does that make sense? Because h, okay, h prime of 3, they're taking the derivative. But what is this telling me? This is telling me that h is the inverse of f. So f is the original function. So it's 1 over the derivative of the original, okay. But I got to plug in something here. So now I have this relationship here. Now remember, what is this guy? That's the y value of the original, okay? This is the y value of what? F. Okay, this is the y value of f. Okay, so let me write that down. Y value of f. Well, how do I know it's f? Because it gives me this relationship here. If this is the y value of f, so let's see, I'm looking for f, that's the y, look at the y value. So what's my x value? 2. So I'm going to plug in 2. And then what's f prime of 2? F prime of 2 is, look at that, f prime of 2 is 1. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. So what happens with these g's? Nothing. They just kind of use it to maybe confuse you, try to just see if you knew the concept correctly. But hopefully that starts to make sense. And I always kind of use this 1 over the derivative of something. It gets a little bit confusing. So what I like to do is, I know I have to use the derivative somehow. So whether it's I take the derivative, I put it underneath, I have my x, right? But then I figure, okay, what am I going to plug in? And then I go back to the information they give me. Okay, this is the y value, and I go from there. Okay, or I do here, okay, this is the y value, I'm trying to find the x. Okay, so it's 1 over the derivative of the original. Okay, what's the derivative of the original? Okay, it's a g prime of something. What am I going to plug in? Okay, well, this is the y value, I'm looking for x. Okay, what is it? Oh, it's 7. I plug in 7. And hopefully that helps. Alright guys, I'll talk to you guys soon.